The widow in the crowd. The sun was hot above the steel buildings of Outpost 17. Crowds pushed through the narrow lanes filled with noise, smoke, and the smell of tired bodies. It was job day, when laborers lined up in hopes of being picked for work. In the middle of that crowd stood a woman, not just any woman, an alien widow. Her name was Kira. She was thin, her cheeks hollow. Her clothes were old and patched. Dust clung to her skin. She stood quietly, her eyes down, hands tightly holding a small pouch of broken tools. Behind her, hiding behind her long coat, were two small children, her son Darrow and her daughter Lean. Their eyes were wide, their stomachs empty, and their feet bare. Every few minutes a loudspeaker called out names. One by one, others were chosen. Sector cleaners needed. 2 strong arms for cargo loading. Mechanic assistant wanted. Must not be trouble. But when someone looked at Kira, they looked away quickly. Whispers followed her like shadows. That's the widow. Her mate died in the mine explosion. She brings bad luck. No one wants her. Kira heard every word but said nothing. She only hugged her children closer. She had been coming every week, hoping for work. But no one picked her. They saw her as weak, a broken woman, a burden. Her husband had once worked as a miner. He died saving others when the tunnels collapsed. Since then, no one dared to help her. No one wanted trouble. And now Kira had nothing left. No food, no home, just her children, and a fading hope. Suddenly her knees bent slightly. Her body swayed. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her eyes blurred, but she didn't fall. A small hand, her son's, held her arm. Mom, Darrow whispered. We should go. She shook her head. Not yet. Just a little longer. But she knew the truth. No one was going to call her name, until someone stepped forward. A man. Tall, not alien. Human. He had kind eyes, sunburnt skin, and a heavy worker's vest. A wrench was strapped to his belt. He was watching her. Kira looked away quickly. She wasn't used to people staring at her kindly. Mostly, they stared with fear, or hate, but this man walked toward her. Are you looking for work? He asked. She hesitated. Yes, sir. What can you do? He asked softly. Anything, she whispered. I can clean, carry, fix small things. I can stay quiet. I don't ask much, just food for my children. The man looked down and saw the 2 little faces staring back at him. He knelt, looked at them gently, and said, Hello there. I'm David. Lean hid behind her mother. Darrow only nodded. David stood up again. Come with me. Kira froze. You want to hire me? David didn't answer with words. He just started walking. Kira followed. The crowd stared. Some aliens whispered, louder now. Why is a human helping her? Stupid human, wasting his time. She's cursed. She'll bring him bad luck too. But Kira didn't hear them anymore. Her heart was beating too fast. Her legs shook as she followed David past the crowd, past the gates and into the loading docks. David stopped in front of a large storage room filled with parts, metal sheets, boxes, and dust. It's a mess, he said. Clean it. Sort the tools, keep what's working, throw out what's not. Kira looked around. The place was a disaster. But she nodded. Yes, sir. David opened a small box beside the door. Inside were food packs. For your children, he said. Kira's eyes widened. Her lips parted, but no words came. She took the packs with shaking hands. Thank you. David shrugged. They need to eat. You do too. Eat first, then work. Kira held the food close like it might vanish. Darrow and Lean were already opening a pack, eyes sparkling. She wanted to cry. She hadn't seen them smile in weeks. David looked at her again. I don't care what they say about you. Everyone deserves a chance. You work hard, I'll keep you. Then he walked away. Kira stood there for a moment, frozen in place. For the first time in a long, long time, she felt something warm inside. Hope, she whispered under her breath so only the walls could hear. Thank you, human. The job. No one else. Wanted Kira returned the next morning before the sun even touched the sky. She had washed her face in cold water, brushed her children's hair with her fingers, and tied her worn scarf tighter around her head. Her children, Darrow and Lean, sat nearby holding empty bowls. They had eaten last night for the first time in days. Thanks to that human, David. Kira stood in front of the storage unit. It looked just as messy and broken as before. Wires hung from the ceiling. Tools were scattered. Dust floated in the air like tired snow. But Kira didn't care. She rolled up her sleeves and began. She didn't waste a second. She sorted bolts by size, wiped tools clean, stacked boxes in neat rows, and even fixed a broken circuit panel using her own worn tools. She didn't complain. She didn't rest. Her fingers bled from cuts, but she kept going. By the time David arrived, she had cleared half the room. He raised an eyebrow. You weren't supposed to clean the whole galaxy, he joked. Kira lowered her head. I can slow down if it's too much. David smiled. No, it's good, just didn't expect it. Then he noticed her hands. She had wrapped them in cloth. You're hurt. It's fine, she said quickly. Please, don't stop the job. David didn't reply. He walked into the back room and came out with a med spray. Give me your hands. Kira hesitated. No one had touched her kindly in years. She slowly held them out. David sprayed the medicine. It stung. She didn't flinch. You did good, he said. Kira looked at him with silent eyes. She didn't say thank you. She didn't know how to. But deep inside, something began to thaw. Later that day, a tall alien woman entered the work zone. Her skin was pale blue and her voice sharp. You hired her? She snapped at David. David didn't even look up. Yes. She's a widow, a reject. There were stronger workers available. David crossed his arms. Stronger maybe, but not better. The alien narrowed her eyes. You'll regret this. She turned and stormed off. Kira had heard every word. Her hand shook. Shame filled her chest again. She walked to David quietly. I can leave if it causes problems. David looked at her for a long moment, then said, Let them talk. I choose who I trust. Not them. Kira's lips trembled. She turned her face away so he wouldn't see the tears. By evening, the children were tired, curled in a corner of the storeroom. Lean hugged an empty toolbox like it was a pillow. Darrow drew pictures on the dusty floor with a wire. Kira worked until her legs nearly gave out. David walked in again. You can stop now. I still have to clean the... You've done enough, he said. Rest. She sat down slowly, afraid the moment she stopped, the dream would break. David pulled out a folded cloth and laid it on the floor. Use this. Better than cold metal. Kira looked at him. Why are you helping me? She asked softly. David shrugged. Why not? No one else even looked at me. David sat on a crate. Maybe that's the problem. Too many people looking away. Kira said nothing. Then David asked, What did you do before? I used to manage tools at the mine, she said. Organizing, repairs, inspections. Nothing special. That's useful. She blinked. Is it? He nodded. Most don't even know how to hold a wrench. She gave a small smile. My mate taught me. Said it would protect me someday. David looked at her. He was right. That made her chest hurt. Not in a bad way, but in a way that made her feel like her heart was waking up. The next morning, something changed. As she walked to the work zone, she passed 2 alien guards laughing loudly. Look, the widow's still following that human around. Must be desperate for attention. Or shelter. Maybe both. Kira's face burned. She didn't stop walking, but David heard them too. He walked up to the guards, looked them in the eyes and said one thing. "She works harder than both of you combined." They went silent. Kira stood behind him, stunned. No one had ever stood up for her. David turned back and gave her a nod. "Let's get to work." That day, she worked with more fire than ever before. Not for food, not for survival, but because someone finally saw her, not as a burden, not as a widow, but as a person. And for Kira, that changed everything. Cracks in the shell. The cold came early that week. Winds howled through the outer rings of Outpost 17, and heaters inside the worker zone flickered weakly. David arrived at the storage area just after sunrise. He expected to see Kira already sorting. Tools as usual, but something felt wrong. The doors were still closed. No sound inside. David opened the door slowly. The room was dim. Tools sat untouched. Boxes were still piled the same way they were yesterday. He stepped in, and then he saw them. Kira was sitting on the floor, holding a small bundle in her lap. It, too, was her daughter, Lean. The girl's eyes were half shut. Her skin looked pale and gray under the weak lights. Her breaths were shallow. Her little fingers were cold and unmoving. Kira didn't look up. She didn't even hear David come in. She just whispered again and again, rocking slightly. "Stay with me. Please, stay with me." David froze. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Then he stepped forward quickly. "What happened?" he asked. Kira finally noticed him. Her face was pale, lips trembling. "She has fever," she said in a thin voice. "I didn't want to bother anyone. I thought it would pass." David knelt beside them. He touched Lean's forehead. Burning. This wasn't a small fever. This was dangerous. "Kira," he said firmly, "we need to take her to the med pod now." Kira looked terrified. "But I can't pay. I don't have credits." "I didn't ask for credits," he said. "I asked for trust." She blinked. He stood up, gently lifted Lean in his arms and turned toward the exit. Kira followed, silent and stunned. The med pod whirred to life. Lean lay inside, connected to a scanner. The machine beeped softly. David tapped a few controls. Medicine was injected. The system warmed her tiny body. A soft hum filled the room as the healing process began. Kira stood in the corner, hands over her mouth. She couldn't believe it. Most aliens wouldn't lift a finger to help a widow's child, let alone a human using private medtech. "She'll be okay," David said after checking the readings. "She just needs rest and heat. You brought her here just in time." "No," Kira whispered. "I waited too long." David walked over. "You did everything you could. You didn't give up." Kira's shoulders shook. She sat down slowly on a bench, burying her face in her hands. "I thought I'd lose her," she sobbed. "I thought this place would take her too, just like it took her father." David sat beside her, saying nothing. Silence filled the room, but not a cold one. A warm silence. A safe one. After a while, Kira spoke. "My husband, he died in the tunnels when Lean was just a baby. He saved 6 others before the collapse, but after that no one would talk to me. Not even my own sister. They called me cursed." David listened without a word. "I tried everything. Cleaning dishes, carrying bricks, selling scraps. But no, one wanted a widow with 2 mouths to feed." She looked up at David, eyes red. "But you helped me." "Why?" David thought for a moment. "My mother was a widow too," he said quietly. "Back on Earth, no one helped her either, but she raised me anyway." He looked at her. "So when I saw you in that crowd, I saw her." Kira's mouth opened, but no sound came. No words were big enough for the feeling in her chest. That evening, David brought a blanket and laid it over Lean. The girl's color was returning. Her breathing was steady now. Kira sat beside her, brushing her daughter's hair gently. David left quietly and came back with 2 bowls of hot food. He handed one to Kira. She stared at it. I don't deserve this." "Yes, you do," he said. She took it with shaking hands. "I can work double tomorrow." Just be here for your kids, he replied. That's already the hardest job. She laughed a little, a quiet, strange sound, like the first sunlight after a long storm. She hadn't laughed in months. Later that night, David walked through the camp, passing aliens who looked at him strangely. One of them, a green-skinned vendor, stopped him. You're really helping that widow? He asked. David nodded. She's trouble. No, David said calmly. She's a mother. And he kept walking. Back inside, Kira looked at her sleeping children. For the first time in a long, long time, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel useless. She didn't feel cursed. She felt like someone worth saving. And it all began with a human who didn't turn away. The past, she never spoke. The next few days passed quietly. Kira returned to the storage unit as soon as Lean's fever broke. She insisted she was fine. But David noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way her fingers trembled, the long silences when she thought no one was watching. Something inside her was still hurting. Something deeper than sickness or hunger. One morning, David found her sitting on the edge of a metal crate, tools beside her, but she hadn't started work. Kira? He asked. She blinked and looked up like she had just woken from a bad dream. Yes? You've already sorted this section, he said gently. 3 times. Kira looked down at the bolts in her hand. She hadn't even realized. David sat down across from her. You don't have to say anything, but if something's weighing on you, sometimes it helps to talk. Kira didn't speak. The silence stretched between them. Then slowly she placed the bolts down. There's something you don't know, she said in a soft voice. Something no one else here ever wanted to know. David waited. She didn't look at him. She stared at the floor, her voice low and steady, like someone telling a story she had repeated many times in her own mind. My husband, Yarn. He wasn't just a miner, he was a whistleblower. He discovered that the safety protocols were being ignored. The tunnels were unstable. The company was saving money by skipping repairs. She swallowed hard. He tried to report it. They threatened him, said if he kept talking they'd cut off our food rations, that they'd make our children disappear. David's fists tightened, but he didn't interrupt. So he went public anyway. He spoke to an off-world reporter. 2 days later, the collapse happened. He died saving others, yes, but no one believes it was just an accident. She finally looked up at David. They blamed me, said I put the whole station at risk. That, my mate brought shame. Everyone turned away, my own family moved sectors, I was marked as a threat, my name went on a list. David stared at her, shocked. Kira, you were punished for his courage. She nodded. I had no choice, I had to survive. For my children. David leaned back. Now it made sense. Why no one would hire her. Why she was treated like poison. Not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to stand next to a man who spoke the truth. You did the right thing, David said quietly. No, she said. I was just trying to protect my family. That is the right thing. Kira looked at him, truly looked at him, like she had never really seen him before. No one has ever said that to me, she whispered. David smiled. Maybe they should have. That evening after work, David handed her something unexpected, a small metal badge with a name on it. Kira turned it over. It was a security clearance chip. For what? She asked. There's an opening in logistics control, David said. They need someone who can manage inventory systems, data sorting, quality checks. Her eyes widened. But I'm just a cleaner. No, Kira, you're smart. You've been keeping this place running better than I ever could. I have no papers, no certifications. You don't need them, he said. You have me. She held the chip tightly in her palm. I don't know what to say. Then say yes. She stared at him, heart racing. Yes, she breathed. Yes, I'll try. David gave her a small nod. Then we'll try together. That night, Kira Kira sat with her children outside the small supply unit. The stars above were dim behind the dome ceiling, but she pointed at them anyway. See? That one? She told Darrow and Lean. That one is called Earth. That's where the human is from. Is he going to stay with us forever? Lean asked sleepily. Kira looked toward the warehouse. I don't know, she said. But he's already changed our world. The little girl leaned against her. Kira brushed her hair softly, and for the first time, the memory of Jarn didn't hurt so much. She had carried shame for so long, carried silence. But now someone had heard her. Not just heard her, but believed her. And in the dark edges of her tired heart, something new was growing. Courage. The offer that changed everything. The logistics office was nothing like the dusty storage unit Kira had worked in. It had bright lights, smooth floors, and quiet halls filled with screens, codes, and control panels. Everything looked expensive, clean, and out of place for someone like her. Kira stood by the doorway, hands clasped, heart pounding. She wore the best clothes she had, still worn, still patched, but neat and clean. Her clearance badge hung around her neck, but it felt heavy, like it didn't belong. A short alien woman with golden skin approached. Her sharp eyes scanned Kira up and down. You're the widow, she said flatly. Kira nodded. Yes. The woman sighed. David really wants to risk his reputation for you? I didn't ask him to. No, but he gave you a chance anyway. She tapped a screen and pulled up a data terminal. Sit here. Log item IDs. Check for errors. If you make a mistake, I'll know. Kira nodded and sat. Her fingers hovered over the panel. Then something strange happened. Her hands began to move fast. She remembered the format, the system flow. Her eyes moved line by line, correcting tags, highlighting missing shipments, updating broken entries. It was like muscle memory. Her old life, her old skills, came flooding back. The golden alien watched quietly, arms crossed. By the time 2 hours passed, Kira had cleared 3 days' worth of backlog. The alien leaned over and stared at the screen. You're not just some desperate mother, she said slowly. No, Kira said, not proudly, but calmly. I'm more than what they say I am. The woman grunted. Let's see how long you last. That evening, David found Kira sitting outside the warehouse with her children. They were laughing, eating warm food, and Darrow had made a toy from scrap metal, a little walking creature that clanked around awkwardly. David smiled. You look tired, he said. I am, Kira laughed softly, but a good kind of tired. He sat beside her. They told me you cleared the entire first shipment log. Kira shrugged. It was just like I remembered. You impressed them. I don't need to impress anyone. I just need to keep this job. David paused, then pulled something from his pocket. It was a thin, rectangular data card. What's this? Kira asked. Payment, he said. For your first week in logistics, full credits. Kira's hands shook as she took it. You're paying me like the others? You are one of the others now. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. I thought I'd never be part of anything again. Well, David said. Maybe the system just needed someone brave enough to return. Kira looked down at the card. With this, she could buy new clothes for her kids, real food, maybe even rent a tiny home one day, and all of it, because one human believed in her when no one else would, but not everyone was happy. The next morning, a group of alien workers waited outside the building. Among them stood Varric, a tall, broad-shouldered alien with silver tattoos. He had mocked Kira before, and now he was angry. She took the job I wanted, he said to the crowd. Because the human gave it to her. She's not better, just lucky, another worker spat. She should stay in the gutter where she came from. David stepped forward. Anyone got a problem, say it to me. Varric sneered. You think she's worth more than us? David didn't shout. He didn't fight. Instead, he turned to Kira and said, Show them. Kira hesitated. Then she stepped past David and looked Varric in the eyes. "I don't want to fight," she said, "but I won't hide anymore." She took a breath, held up a scanner and said calmly, "Give me 5 minutes. I'll sort the incoming shipment before you even finish arguing." Varric laughed. "Go ahead." 5 minutes later, she handed him a perfectly balanced load sheet with errors marked, delivery path optimized, and a saved 2-hour route adjustment. Varric's jaw dropped. The others went silent. Kira didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She just handed the scanner to David, picked up her tools, and walked back to work. And in that moment, the crowd saw what David had seen all along. Not a widow, not a burden, not a curse. A worker, a mother, a survivor. Later that night, David knocked on her room's door. Kira opened it, surprised. He held out a tiny wrapped package. "What's this?" she asked. "A gift," he said. "Don't worry, it's nothing fancy." She opened it slowly. Inside was a pair of work gloves. Thick, strong, new, for her. "I noticed yours were falling apart," David said. Kira stared at them for a long time. Then she smiled. A real smile. "You're not like anyone I've ever met," she said softly. David chuckled. "Let's hope that's a good thing." And as the door closed behind her, Kira held the gloves close to her chest, as if they were the most precious thing in the galaxy. Envy, enemies, and fire. It started with whispers. She doesn't deserve that job. The human gave her special treatment. Widows don't belong in logistics. Kira ignored them. She focused on her work. Each day she arrived early, organized shipment logs, and helped new workers learn the system. Even the supervisor who once doubted her now relied on her daily. But success draws shadows. One evening, as the sky outside the dome turned dark orange, Kira finished her shift and returned to the storage unit to gather her old tools. Darrow and Lean were already asleep nearby, curled up under warm blankets David had given them. She packed slowly, humming softly, thinking for the first time about tomorrow, not in fear, but in hope. Then a faint sound broke her thoughts. A creak. A whisper of movement. She stood still. Smoke. Thin. Bitter. Her eyes shot to the back of the storage unit. Orange light flickered from behind a crate. Fire. It spread fast. Within seconds, smoke poured across the floor. Kira grabbed her children and ran toward the door, coughing hard. Her lungs burned. Flames danced along the walls, now crackling louder. She reached the door and froze. The lock panel was glowing red, locked. From the outside, she pounded the door. "Help! Someone! Please!" Nothing. Darrow coughed violently. Leon cried, her little arms wrapped around Kira's leg. Then, clang. A heavy noise above. The ceiling vent. Kira lifted both children up and shoved them toward it. "Climb! Go! Now!" Darrow climbed first, pulling Lean behind him. The smoke was rising fast. Kira coughed again, eyes burning, heart pounding. She heard voices outside. Then, a loud crash. The door blasted open. David. His face was covered with soot, his shirt half burned. A fire extinguisher in one hand, he rushed inside, spraying foam, pushing through smoke. "Kira!" he shouted. "Where are you?" "Here!" she gasped. He grabbed her hand and pulled her out just as flames swallowed the roof. Outside, Darrow and Lean were safe, trembling in the arms of another worker. David collapsed beside them, coughing hard. Kira held her chest, trying to breathe. She looked back at the burning room. Her tools, her bedding, everything she had rebuilt, gone. The crowd stared at the fire in shock. But Kira saw something else. In the shadows, at the edge of the street, stood Varric. His eyes met hers for just a second, and then he turned and vanished into the night. Hours later, the fire was out. Workers returned to their rooms. Kira sat quietly in David's office, a blanket over her shoulders. David brought her water. Someone locked the door, he said. Kira nodded. It was him, she said quietly. Varric. I'll report him. She shook her head. He'll deny it. Say it was an accident, or someone else. David clenched his jaw. Then I'll report him anyway. You could get in trouble for defending me. David leaned forward. I don't care. Kira stared into his eyes. Why? She whispered. Why risk so much for me? David was silent for a moment, then he said, Because you saved me too. Kira blinked. What? He smiled slightly. I came here to escape. My home. Earth. It was broken in a different way. I lost people. I lost hope. But then I saw you, standing in a crowd, holding on for your kids, still fighting. Even when the world turned its back on you. He looked away, eyes distant. You reminded me what strength looks like. Kira's heart ached. No one had ever said such words to her. Not even her husband. The next morning, David gathered the workers. He stood in front of the warehouse, Kira beside him, still bruised but standing tall. He looked around at the crowd. I know some of you don't like her. Some of you think she doesn't belong, that she got lucky. He paused. You're right. She did get lucky. Murmurs rose. But not because she was given anything. She got lucky because we got her. Someone who works harder than all of us. Someone who nearly died for her children and didn't stop working even with burned hands. He turned to Kira. People like her make this outpost stronger. The crowd went quiet. Some looked down. Others shuffled away. But a few stepped forward. One alien woman raised her hand. I can help her rebuild her tools. Another said, She can stay in our quarters for now. Kira couldn't speak. She just nodded, eyes full, throat tight. That night, Kira sat beside David on a bench. Stars blinked through the dome's ceiling. Darrow and Lean were asleep nearby. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You already did, David replied. By surviving. They sat in silence, warm and close. And in that quiet moment, the fire that tried to destroy her had done something unexpected. It lit the beginning of a bond, unshakable, honest, and real. A home she never dreamed of. Rain fell softly on the dome that morning. Artificial weather was rare in Outpost 17, but today, the skies wept. Kira stood in front of the charred remains of the storage unit where she had started. The place where her hands had bled, where her daughter had burned with fever, where hope had first begun to grow. It was nothing now, just black metal and ash. And yet, she smiled, not with sadness, but with peace. Behind her, Darrow and Leanne were playing near a solar cart, giggling, chasing each other through puddles. They were safe. They were warm. And for the first time in their lives, they were happy. Kira, a voice called from behind. She turned. David stood there, a metal case in one hand, a folded paper in the other. I have something to show you, he said. She followed him, not asking questions. They walked past the workshops, past the crowded zones, and up a quiet path she had never seen before. At the end stood a small home, old but strong. A thick roof, windows that weren't cracked, a small yard with dry soil ready for planting. Kira froze. This is... David opened the door and stepped inside. The room was clean. 2 beds, a heater, a kitchen unit, cabinets filled with food. A folded blanket on the couch. For you, he said. Kira couldn't breathe. You can't mean that. I had this place for a while, David said. Bought it when I first arrived, thinking I'd build a life here, but I never did. She looked around, her voice shaking. Why me? David walked over and placed the folded paper into her hands. It was a contract, shared residency permit. Her name was printed beside his. It's not just for you, he said. It's for them too. Darrow, Lean, I know you've carried this weight alone for a long time, but you don't have to anymore. Kira's lips parted. She had no words. Just tears. Tears that didn't come from pain or fear, but from something she had long forgotten. Belonging. Later that evening, as the lights in the house glowed softly, Darrow ran into the room with a smile. "Is this really our home now?" he asked. Kira bent down and hugged him tightly. "Yes," she whispered. "This is home." Lian pulled a blanket from a drawer and wrapped it around herself. "It's warm." She giggled. Kira watched them for a long time, afraid to blink. David entered with a tray of food. He set it on the table and looked at her. "You okay?" She nodded, eyes glistening. "I don't know how to live like this, without fear." David gave her a kind smile. "Then take your time. I'm not going anywhere." She walked to him and took his hand, softly, gently, like a breath. "David," she said, "you didn't just give me food or work or shelter. You gave me something I thought I'd never have again." He tilted his head. "What's that?" She looked up, eyes shining, dignity. A week later, word spread across Outpost 17. The widow no one wanted had become a manager. Her children were enrolled in the education unit, and she, Kira, was now a respected worker, trusted, welcomed. Some still whispered behind her back, but most looked at her with something new, respect, not because she had power, but because she had survived, and beside her stood the man who never gave up on her, a human. One night, as they sat on the porch under the quiet sky, David handed Kira a small plant. "It's from Earth," he said. "Hard to grow, but strong." Kira took it carefully. "What's it called?" "Hope vine," she laughed softly. "Fitting." He looked at her. "So, what now?" She thought for a moment. "Now," she said, "we live." And for the first time in her life, she didn't say it with fear. She said it with certainty. Because the story that began with rejection and silence had become one of trust, warmth, and unexpected love. A human didn't just help a widow. He gave her a place to stand, a future to build, and a home she never dreamed of.